Hey, so recently, Souls lore YouTubers Ratatosker and Smotown did a podcast episode together to talk about Elden Ring's upcoming DLC. While discussing some other lore channels, Ratatosker said this.
I've come to the point where I'm like, what I need is schizos. That's what I need. I need crazy people with their far out theories. Just crazy theories that, and maybe some of them are unlikely, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. They're throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. I want to see. I'm going to see their theories.
Well, I agree. And so I wanted to make this video because I have a theory that kind of goes against popular opinion, and I've hardly seen it anywhere else. And the more I look into it, the evidence seems obvious, to the point where I'm expecting it to be confirmed in the DLC. So here's my schizo theory. Melina is Miquella, or at least some sort of spirit projection of him. Let me break it down for you. To start, we need to talk about Saint Trina. Saint Trina is an enigmatic figure mentioned throughout the game. There are only a few item descriptions that mention her by name. Every item that mentions her is directly related to sleep. The sword of Saint Trina's description states, "Some say she is a comely young girl, others are sure he is a boy." This duality is also seen in the Miquella's Lily and Trina's Lily items, which look strikingly similar. Now, there's obviously some connection between Miquella and Saint Trina, and at this point, it's mostly agreed upon that they're the same person. But as of now, the only clear image we have of Saint Trina's face is an engraving on an item called Saint Trina's Torch. Now, if you ask me, I think she looks a lot like Melina. Her hair conceals her face, which brings to mind Melina's hair and hood, and she even has a small mark on her face where Melina's mark is. There's also this strange eye on her head, which could be a representation of Melina's purple eye in the Frenzied Flame ending. After all, sleep items and Saint Trina are strongly associated with this same shade of purple. I think this is because Melina is Saint Trina, the female alter ego of Miquella. Speaking of faces, it's interesting that even though Miquella is briefly shown in the DLC trailer, we never see his face. I suspect that when the DLC comes around and we finally get a good look at him, he may have a mark on his eye like Melina. But back to Saint Trina. What's with all the sleep stuff? Well, there's one major instance of sleep in the game, which seems to support Melina being Saint Trina. Before Melina burns herself in the Forge of the Giants, she touches the player's hand. The player then seems to fall asleep, later waking up in crumbling Farum Azula. It's a strange moment that seems to be significant, as Melina is the only character we see with this sort of ability. But there is one more key incident in the game related to sleep. When we acquire Torrent and return to the church at the beginning of the game, we find the merchant Kale asleep, surrounded by mist. Ranni appears and gives us the Lone Wolf Ashes and Spirit Calling Bell, referring to them as a gift from Torrent's former master. But who is she referring to exactly? Well, many people theorize that it was Miquella, based on the fact that Kale is asleep and Miquella has ties to Saint Trina. It's since been confirmed in the promotional image for the DLC that Miquella was Torrent's master at some point. But if Miquella is Torrent's former master, then why does Melina have him in the beginning of the game? I mean, we see plain as day that Melina is riding Torrent in the opening cutscene, and she's the one who gives him to us. So wouldn't that make Melina Torrent's former master? Yes, because they're the same person. Now, you may be thinking, they could both be Torrent's former master and not be the same person. But allow me to be pedantic here for a second. Ranni only appears here after Melina has given you Torrent. Therefore, Ronnie's dialogue referring to Torrent's former master is only accessible if in your game, Melina is no longer Torrent's master. That has to be for a reason. If Ronnie was just referring to Miquella and Miquella wasn't Melina, this dialogue wouldn't be locked behind Melina giving up Torrent. She is referring to Miquella and Melina both, because they're the same person. I mean, they even both ride him in the same strange position, with 2 legs to one side. It's been confirmed that we access the DLC through the cocoon in Mohg's boss arena. When we enter Mohg's boss arena, Mohg lifts the hand and addresses it as Dearest Miquella. And in the DLC trailer, we hear a voice say,
"Come now, touch the withered arm and travel to the realm of shadow."
So, it seems we will access the DLC specifically by touching Miquella's hand, which hangs out of the cocoon. Now, where else in Elden Ring have we seen this before? When we first access the Roundtable Hold, we do so by touching Melina's hand. The Roundtable Hold clearly exists separately from the Lands Between in some way, since it can only be accessed by teleporting. I think this is because it exists in the Land of Shadow, or is otherwise veiled in the same way. Ziostorm recently pointed out that the Roundtable Hold has veil-like elements in its design, like the golden strands of grace floating above the round table, and also its icon on the map. I think that Melina, also known as Miquella, has the unique ability to travel through these veils, and they can bring others through as well by touching them. If we dig a little deeper into the names of the characters, we can see that Miquella starts with M, and Melina starts with M. These are the same letter, so they must be the same character. Alright, so if this is Miquella's corpse, then how can he also exist in the Land of Shadow? Well, Elden Ring's demigods are obviously no stranger to having projections or doubles of themselves roaming around, but the way I see it, the Land of Shadow seems to act as a sort of spirit world. Now, that's a whole topic for another video, and let me know if that's something you'd like to see, but for the purposes of this video, here's what we need to know. A statement released by Bandai Namco states that Miquella entered the Land of Shadows by divesting himself of his flesh. This sounds familiar. Melina tells us early in the game that she is burned and bodiless. She phases in and out of visibility like a spirit, and she has burns on her hands, but we don't know exactly how this happened. We also don't know exactly how Miquella divested himself of his flesh. I think this will be made clear in the DLC, but for now, I think it's possible that Miquella burned himself alive, which gave his spirit access to the Land of Shadow, and Melina is his burned, bodiless form, which he uses to return to the Lands Between in disguise. The DLC trailer ends with this shot of Miquella. I know this is probably just holy light around him, but am I crazy, or does it kind of look like fire? When you proceed along the path to the Frenzied Flame, Melina warns you of the dangers and urges you to reconsider. And we all know what happens in the Frenzied Flame ending. If you do decide to take on the Frenzied Flame, the only way to cure yourself is by using an item called Miquella's Needle, which wards away the meddling of the outer gods. Clearly, both Miquella and Melina have a vested interest in repelling the outer gods, particularly the Frenzied Flame. The reason for this isn't clear, but I hope to get more clarification in the DLC. You know, when it's revealed that they're the same person. Interestingly, in the cut content for the game, there's an item called St. Trina's Crystal Ball. The item description mentions using sleep to calm those affected by the Frenzied Flame. Interesting. Throughout the game, Melina gives us some information on herself. She was born at the foot of the Erd Tree, and inside the Erd Tree, she was given a purpose by her mother. Many people, myself included, take this to mean she is an Empyrean, born of Marika and Radigan, like Melina and Miquella. But if she's an Empyrean child of Marika, why is she barely mentioned anywhere else in the game? Why is Gideon the All-Knowing seemingly unaware of her existence when he knows about every other major demigod? Well, because she's just an alter ego of Miquella, and Gideon even admits himself.
Miquella is the one thing that remains a mystery to me.
Another thing to note is the whole butterfly theory. If you haven't heard it, basically, there are 3 types of butterflies in the game, which spawned a theory assigning each one to a child of Radigan and Marika. The nascent butterfly seems to represent Miquella, Aeonian represents Melina, and Smoldering represents Melina. But with the DLC trailer and the reveal of Mesmer, many people now think he is actually the Smoldering butterfly. So where's Melina's? Well, I think she's the nascent butterfly. Because she's Miquella. There does seem to be a shot showing pink butterflies in the DLC trailer, so we'll have to wait and see what the deal is there. Also, let's talk about Miquella and Melina's parents really quick. Radigan and Marika are literally 2 individuals occupying one body, one male, one female. It's possible that something similar is occurring with Miquella and Melina. As they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Melina's journey serves as the framework of the game's story. Our entire quest revolves around bringing her to the base of the Erd Tree. In an interview with IGN, Miyazaki stated that the DLC will be centered around the player tracing Miquella's footsteps. I could see this acting like the DLC's version of the Guidance of Grace, with his footprints pointing to each site of Grace, or whatever the DLC version of them is. I've even seen it speculated that Miquella will personally speak to us at sites of Grace, like Melina does. Either way, it's obvious that his journey will be the driving narrative of the DLC, much like Melina's journey is in the base game. With Miquella and Melina being the 2 most central characters of the game's narrative, I think their connection and shared identity will be a big reveal in the DLC. Finally, I have a few more thoughts to share that don't really fit into their own section. First off, yeah, I know, people think Melina is the gloam-eyed queen. And there is some evidence that she could be. But I don't think that's necessarily incompatible with the theory that she's St. Trina and Miquella. It makes it a bit overcomplicated, sure. But who knows? If I had to pick though, I honestly do think there's more things tying Melina to Miquella than the gloam-eyed queen. And I'd like to talk about who I think the gloam-eyed queen is in a future video. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see what's revealed in the DLC. Another thing I should note is, I'm not entirely convinced that the arm coming from the cocoon is even Miquella's arm to begin with. Maybe when Moog touches the hand and says, "Dearest Miquella," he's just thinking out loud about Miquella in a broad sense. I mean, Miquella's main thing is that he's an eternal child, and this corpse is like a huge old guy. I know there are theories that he grew himself inside the cocoon, but I don't know. I'm starting to think this character in the DLC trailer could actually be Miquella, and the corpse is just a red herring. That would kind of go against my theory of Melina and Miquella using their hands to take people to the Land of Shadow, but I wanted to include it anyway. And back to Melina being Miquella, I have two other quick things that I wanted to talk about. So, we all know Miquella created the Halig tree, right? And there seems to be some evidence that he may have created other minor trees as well. Well, when Melina is summoned for the fight against Morgott, she uses a unique spell when she falls in battle. This animation of creating a healing spectral tree is not seen anywhere else in the game as far as I know. So there could be some connection there with Miquella and creating trees. Also, Miquella seems to have a goal of bringing a true death to Godwyn, as seen in the description for the Golden Epitaph sword, which deals extra damage to those who live in death. And Melina also seems to feel some type of way about bringing death back to the Lands Between, saying this at the Forge of the Giants.
I have long observed the Lands Between. This world is in dire need of repair, and death indiscriminate.
She also seems to have ties to the Black Knife Assassins. She uses the Blade of Calling, which shares the unique fighting style of the Black Knife Assassins. And obviously she mentions Destined Death in the Frenzied Flame ending. So I think maybe Miquella/Melina was involved somehow in the Night of the Black Knives, and they feel some guilt about Godwyn's death going wrong. Or maybe it's a Marika-Radigan situation where they have opposite motives, meaning the Melina half participated in the Night of the Black Knives and the Miquella half is trying to repair what she did. Just something to think about. So, what do you think? Is there something I missed? Am I onto something? Am I crazy? When the DLC drops in June, and it turns out I'm right, be sure to leave a comment here saying, validated, you're a genius, you're godlike. And if it turns out I'm wrong, that just means Miyazaki knows I'm onto him, and he changed it, and he's probably coming after me. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to hear more nonsense like this. Peace.